pure vintage or spoiled? Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please consider thumbing up the video, subscribing to the Patreon to help the channel out, or mainly just leave a comment, talk about this game in question, viticulture in question, or what you think of the video in general. We'll get on with it in just a second, but first, a quick word from the sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk. KIENDA stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to KIENDA and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So here we have Viticulture World with the wine crate for extra storage, and very quickly I will say that if you are storing the game in anything but the collector's box that was sold originally, the wine crate is definitely worth a purchase. It's very clean, it's just a nice simple cube box, it's got trays, it holds everything that you need. Granted, with sleeved cards you might have to squeeze a few of the things in, but they do fit. I haven't needed to like put cards outside the box or anything, and even the stuff that you never use in the Tuscany expansion, like the cheese board and the olive oil board and all that stuff, will still fit in the box anyway, and it just keeps it nice contained. So wine crate, pretty cool, thumbs up. But this expansion is a new co-op affair. So Viticulture has always been a competitive Euro game. It's been one of my favorites, a top 10 of all time potentially. I'm not sure if it went there last year, but like I say, we're talking like my top 20 games of all time. Viticulture with Tuscany, that's the caveat, tends to feature in it. And it's in those early days of Stonemaier where they were just pumping out stuff that I adored. I mean, I love Scythe, I love Viticulture, I love Wingspan. Since then, Pendulum, Red Rising, Tapestry, Libertalia, although that was slightly better, it's not been going quite as well. So it has been a little bit of a dip, but as I say, this is one of my favourites and I credit where it's due. So the idea of putting it in a co-op version though, I was a little bit sceptical at first, because I thought, I enjoy Viticulture as a competitive game, and I thought, well, how do you make it co-op? I mean, do vineyards typically do that? Is this something that would work? Do you still have your own original board in that? I figured it was going to have to be pretty clever to win me over, but I didn't think it was impossible. But being a Viticulture expansion, you know me, I get excited when it comes to expansions for a game I love rather than a brand new game, so naturally I wanted to jump in. So, you know, thanks to the patrons who helped support this channel, I was able to afford to get a copy of this. I had to, there was no review copy for it, so I had to basically go out and get it myself and see what it was all about, and hopefully I'm not too late. So with Viticulture World, essentially what you're doing is everybody has their own vineyard as normal. So here's my player board with the structures I throw into every game as well, and all the buildings and the cards like you normally do. The central board, however, is 2 seasons mainly. I mean, it says spring, but that's just basically event cards. But you have summer and winter, and you have 2 workers for each of which have these cool little hats on. A nice little summer hat and a winter hat, which easily pop on to the meeples, and these represent your untrained workers. You get them all at the start of the game. You don't have to sort of get them all to begin with. But what happens is you play through a scenario deck. So for example, we'll take South America here, and basically they have a setup guide as well as a few events that you pull out, one each round, and by the end of the 6th round everybody must have reached 25 victory points on the track, but as a group you must have all attained 10 influence in the region. It's basically another track to level up. If that is achieved by the end of the 6th round, you win, otherwise you will lose collectively. Each scenario throws in a few little extras that you can essentially that sort of spice the game up a little bit. Like Asia has like these upgrades that you can put on the board that sort of improve some of the actions depending if you meet certain conditions. This South America one here throws in like characters from the South American history, from like monks to conquistadors and all that, and essentially gives you personalities that you can acquire, which can give you some special powers. They throw in like a nice little twist to mix things up. The spring season is essentially event cards and a wake-up chart just as before. Summer and winter play out much like summer and winter before. Summer is more about planting vines and building buildings and getting money. Winter is more about winter visitors, making wine, harvesting fields and so forth. But everybody's taking it in turns to put workers out, but of course you have the same restriction in worker placement. Except now, if your grande worker, your big dude, goes on a space with a fellow player, you can trade stuff with each other. It could be grapes, wine tokens, money, but mainly it will be to trade the cards. So if I've got like this yellow card that doesn't really do me any good here, I mean this accountant, who needs one of them, eh? You know, I think, well hang on, you've got a zymologist over here, I think that's pronounced right.
Yeah, Cool Whip. Cool Whip.
You know what, can we swap? And that way, I've got the card I need, and you've got hopefully a card you need. But on top of that, you can train your workers up. So by paying the cost to train the worker, you essentially pop the hat off, whoop, off he goes.
I swear by my pretty floor bonnet, I will end you.
And then he can go in summer or winter. Doesn't have to be just the summer or winter as before, but on top of that, they can get bonuses from certain tiles. What tiles, you ask? Well, these tiles. You've got innovation tiles now. Rectangular and oval. The rectangular ones, these ones you just basically spend money via another action to get. The rectangular ones improve the spaces themselves. So I've pulled a few here by here. Normally you would just draw a wine order tile. Well, now you get to draw two, and you can immediately fill one of them using wine tokens. Okay, that's an improved action. Take another one. The trade action is normally pay one to get one. You know, you can trade X for Y. Well, now you can pay one to get two. I can play up to 2 winter cards. I can build up to 2 structures at a discount. You know, these basically make the actions better. The oval ones are slightly different. What these effectively do is they give a bonus for anybody who sends their grande or trained worker to a space. So for example, if I put this on the one underneath planting a vine, for example, not only do I get to plant a vine, but I also get to gain an extra buck. You know, all useful. But the added advantage, and probably the main advantage of these, is that they remove the worker placement restriction. So normally, based on player count, there's only so many spots on an action. But with one of these oval tiles, no restriction. Anybody can go there, doesn't matter if it's grande, trained or untrained, everybody can go there. I can't stress enough how important these are, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But for the most part, that's essentially it. You play till the end of the round, and then, as per normal, you collect your residual income, you age your grapes and wine, go back to spring, flip a new event card, reveal new innovation tiles, do a new wake-up section, and you go through again. This basically is what you remember from Viticulture, but with the added discussion among players, that little tradability, and just 1 or 2 minor mechanics thrown in, like the innovation tiles, which are pretty straightforward to implement. And that's one good thing about this expansion, actually. From a rules learning perspective, it is pretty straightforward. The rulebook, I don't know if I can get the rulebook out. No, the rulebook's gone. Oh no, here we go. The rulebooks are over here. So you've only got 2 little rulebooks for this. And they're very thin. One of them is the solo play, and it literally just is that. That's it. You know, we're talking, what, like 3 pages max? Well, some of them are just tweaks. So yeah, we're talking 2 pages worth of rules to operate the solo mode. Sweet. This is what I want from a solo mode, people, alright? Just give me a simple mechanism that doesn't require a ton of upkeep. But then the cooperative expansion, there's not many rules either. I mean, you're talking, what, about 6 pages? Yeah, well, 2 for setup, and then 4 main pages. That's it. It's a very easy expansion to learn. It didn't take me much time at all to just get stuck into my first game. Now, with this particular copy, and I don't know if this will be in the retail versions later, we'll have to see, but there was an expansion promo pack which gave you a replacement for the Green Gully expansion, the Green Gully introductory scenario. This is basically easy scenario. Use that promo pack, because we'll first get on to, well, I don't know, we've talked about a pro there. Let's talk about the first con I have. The difficulty curve for this is, high, to say the least. This is not an easy expansion to win.
Just give us a chance, you son of a
You know, that introduction scenario was replaced by a promo scenario that made the introduction scenario easier. Think about that for a minute. They had to make the intro scenario easier to win. That goes to show just how hard the rest of it is, because you have Asia, which is easy, a bunch of them, so Europe, Asia, and South America, for example, are normal, and then Africa is hard. I think we should change that to medium, hard, hell, because that's basically what the difficulty feels like with this. It's winnable, but it's difficult. If you want a challenge, this is going to give you that challenge hands down, and some of that challenge is just like, oh, we've got to really make optimal choices and, you know, consider what we innovate and what we do. You know, we've got to really do good discussions. And there is a lot of that. And that is all good. But it does lead to another The main reason that you end up with this challenge is because one of the flaws that people talk about with Viticulture, the luck of the draw. I don't mind this too much when I play this the competitive version. I just think the theme outwins it, and yes, there is a little bit of luck of the draw, but you know, that's just part and parcel of the game. That luck of the draw, though, isn't mitigated to a great extent here. Yes, you can trade with other players. That helps. I'm not going to deny that. That is really cool. But if you're spending time doing that, then that's still worse than if you just drew the card yourself. On top of that, yes, you've got all these decks to do. I mean, I've got over there, you probably can't see it, but like the vine cards, the yellow cards, the blue cards, the purple cards, and even the orange cards. I always love the structures. I throw them into every game. So we've already got all those, but now you also have the event deck. So the event deck basically will be 6 cards in a fixed order the first time you play it, but then there's 8 of them in total usually, and you can shuffle 6 of them at random and just go, right, we know what we're going to play with these 6. You don't know what order they're going to come up with. And that's a problem, because some of them are better suited in the late game, some of them are better suited in the early game. And if they turn up at the wrong time, it's going to severely hinder your progress. Not to mention, not all of them are even good. There's a couple in here that will say, this spot can only be gone to by a grande worker this round. Well, that hurts. I don't want to, if I don't draw that in the game, then I've just saved myself a little bit of bother. The randomness of these events, not to mention the innovation tiles, because if an innovation tile comes out for an action you're not planning to use, or you don't use that much, then it's not much of an innovation. I mean, I don't tend to do the draw wine order cards every action pretty much every time I play this game. I get my purple cards from other means. So if I draw the innovation tile for it, I'm like, whatever. I'd rather have an innovation tile that says plant more vines, because that's what I'm always having trouble with, trying to find more vines to, get more vines down quickly so I can grow my grapes. That luck element is still there, and if it put you off with normal viticulture, this isn't going to change anything. The other slight issue is the length of the game is increased. The game of viticulture, I always cap it at 4 players. Never play viticulture with 5 or 6 players. I just did a 5-6 player list lately, 2 top 10 lists. Both of them, people were asking me why viticulture was not on the list. Why does anybody want to play viticulture with 5 or 6 players? I mean, how long do you want this game to take? How much downtime do you want?
5 is right out.
But this one, I might even stress I don't want to play it with 4 again, because all that discussion with other players is good, it's interactive, and it's a thinky Euro. Just like playing, say, Spirit Island multiplayer. It takes a while, but you're in good discussions. Same thing here. But then obviously that takes time. It may sound like a short amount of time, 6 rounds, and from a difficulty perspective it is, but from a length perspective of the game, this is definitely going to take you more time than it will take a normal game of viticulture, which means I'm probably going to cap this at 3 players if I play this as the co-op version. Now, that being said, it is definitely an improvement when you play it solo. I didn't really play competitive viticulture as a solo thing against that autumner. It was kind of early days of the autumner system, and it was kind of like, meh, it's there, but I never really wanted to play it solo. This, however, has a very easy to implement AI. It's kind of an AI that's partially your friend and partially a pain.
Smug mode.
Because what happens is all you do is you flip a top card of an AI deck, and it basically tells you to put their workers in 4 of the action spaces, as depicted here. They clog up the spaces, and so that's really annoying. You can pay money from its own personal little piggy bank, though, that stocks up every turn, and you can pay money to get those workers back, but then you can also use the AI's workers or its money bank to raise your influence or get innovation tiles, or pay for certain things out of its own pocket or share it with you. And not to mention, the AI will also have one of each of the color cards as a little bank, shall we say, that you can trade with in the same manner in a multiplayer. The Grande Worker, go to one of the AI spaces and you can go, you know what, I would like your storehouse, please. So you can take this rubbish little vine that I've got I'm never going to make, I'll take your storehouse. AI doesn't refuse, so it's happy as anything. Well, as happy as an automaton can be. And it does mitigate a little bit, A, of that luck factor, but B, it just makes the AI really simple. It's all you do. Just every season you just go, flip, worker, 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 and free money, and there you go. And then you just carry on with what you're doing.
This is why Superman works alone.
The AI doesn't take a separate turn or anything after you take a turn. It's just one bit of upkeep at the start of a season, and then you do what you want to do, just using the AI as a kind of almost like a little bit of a help guide, even though it clogs up your spaces, which again, luck of the draw. This is another factor with the solo mode particularly, because in solo mode, I might really need to do certain actions next round, and then the card comes up and it clogs them all up. Well, it's not like I made the wrong skillful choice, that's just luck of the draw. Luck is fine in most games, but I feel like if this is going to be a longer affair, that could have been tuned out a little bit. It feels a little bit disheartening to think, well, I'm making a good stride, and at the very end you lose by a gnat's wing because the card just came out and screwed you over. It's like, that's a little bit disheartening, but that's just the way it is.
Stop whining.
Those little mini expansions, the More Visitors and the Rhine Valley, fully compatible, but with those decks, you basically have to decide, are you using the normal cards with the More Visitors, or are you using the Rhine Valley one, because that's how they were in the first place. I'm going to stress that there is a little bit of a warning here. If you play this with the Rhine Valley cards specifically, like this game in particular was using the Rhine Valley cards, I do think the game is slightly harder as a result, because those Rhine Valley cards were very tailor-made to winemaking only. Like that was the whole point of it. It was to focus it more on the wine production, which is great, and I do like using them now and again. But it does make life a little bit trickier when you're trying to play this game and you kind of need to be able to try other types of strategies in order to get the points and influence sometimes. The visitor cards I find don't always gel with what I'm trying to do. Some of them, on the other hand, do. I mean, I pulled the son-in-law in my last game, you know, allowing me to harvest for free every winter is like fantastic. But a lot of the times you can draw these cards that are all about filling wine orders and you just don't have that capacity. Personally, I prefer to play this with the base set and More Visitors, and I think everybody else ought to really, because I think that just brings that difficulty down a little bit. As I say, the rulebook does have a few tweaks in there, so yes, the game is certainly tougher, but there's no point crying a river over it.
You kids are soft.
There has been some talk on the internet about whether certain strategies work better than others, and sir, I have not played it enough times to really make that kind of call myself. Although one thing that I do find myself doing in pretty much every game I play is go to the space that says you can sell an unplanted field. You've only got 6 rounds in this game. You really don't have the time to fill up 3 fields full of vines and get them producing a ton of grapes. It's not gonna happen. So I usually sell my $7 plot instantly. To be fair, I do that in most games of competitive viticulture, but I certainly do it in this solo mode, and that kind of feels like I'm pigeonholing the start of the game a little bit, like it's kind of on rails. Now, that being said, that's just what I do. I've heard some people agree with it, but some people disagree. You'd have to play this a ton of times to work out if that's the case, but certainly I have kind of noticed that. And I would certainly say I recommend that you only try this with people who are familiar with viticulture. Some people may be thinking, well, you know, can I teach this to brand new players who have never played viticulture before because I'm helping them along? Normally, I would like to say yes to that question, but I think trying to teach everybody what you need to do on your board, which is already stuff you need to bear in mind, not to mention the additions that this one throws in, I'd like to think that if you want to stand any chance of winning, you're gonna want to play this as a competitive game first, teach them how to play viticulture, and then you can play this afterwards. I'm not confident on teaching new players this. You know, I tried it once with 3 of us in the game, and I tried 2 new players, and it worked, but it did extend the length of the time, and I did almost feel a little bit like an alpha player because obviously they were new to the game. They weren't necessarily sure of what tactics they should pull on the main map, and I think you need that viticulture experience to get the main thing out of it. So overall, Viticulture World is a solid expansion, just maybe not quite as amazeballs as a lot of the other reviewers are kind of hinting at. There's a lot of 9s and a lot of 10s being thrown around, and I think maybe that's being a little bit too casual with it. It is good. I do like it. I'm glad it's in my collection, and occasionally I do want to pull this out. Maybe for a couple of people I know who are into viticulture, or maybe just to pull it out solo, because I do think that this co-op version is better to play solo than the competitive one, especially with these different scenario packs. I'm definitely going to tweak the difficulty in it though, because I just think with the luck factor included, I think the game is too hard to win a lot of these certain scenarios. I mean, Africa, oh my word. Yeah, good luck with that one. That one is pretty punishing. But I just think maybe make the difficulty a little bit easier, play it mostly solo, maybe 2 or 3 players max, and you're in with a decent expansion. Does it replace the competitive version for me? No. I think the competitive viticulture is still the way to play it, with Tuscany, with structures, get those mamas and papas in there. I don't tend to go for the special workers, but, you know, take it or leave it. But certainly with that board, you need the Tuscany board, you need that influence map and the structure bits and everything. You just need it, you need those seasons. But this is a good alternate mode. So Viticulture World for me overall is getting a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. It's a good expansion. I do like it, and I certainly will prefer to play it solo via this method. It's not essential by any means. You do not need to grab this if you've got normal viticulture, because you really do need to try the normal game first before jumping into this, because they're too similar in how they operate for you to suddenly go, I hate one way and love the other. It's just not going to happen. I wish that the luck element was mitigated a bit better, because here I feel the luck element has actually been increased in this co-op expansion rather than decreased, and that's one of the bigger cons that people have with the normal game. Certainly I wish the game didn't take longer to play either. That is a bit of a concern as well, and those minor balance issues from before, not too fussed about, but certainly the difficulty of this game, you do need to tweak it to make it a bit easier, because otherwise it just feels a little bit too punishing and maybe a little bit out of your control in that regard. So that's it for me. I'm Luke Hector, and this is the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb up the video, consider subscribing to the Patreon if you want to help me get more copies of games like this to review. You know, I don't get a lot of review copies, and so the Patreons are what keep this channel going by allowing me to get these products and give you the review content you desire. But also, mainly, just leave a comment on the video. Talk to me about viticulture. Do you love the game? Do you hate it? Do you like the competitive version more than the co-op version? Are there concerns that you have that I've talked about or not talked about with the game? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll be happy to respond as soon as I can. Until next time, though, you can check out more content on the channel, including 2 top 10 lists I've done recently. My top 10 5-player games and my top 10 6-player games that I did with Mark Monk from Ninja Geek Games. Take care, and remember, no matter which continent you like your wine from, remember, it is still only a game. Bye for now, everyone.